Well, good evening. Before we start our meetings, I do want to let you know tonight we have three separate meetings here: a Public Housing Authority, and then we have a shorter regular meeting, and then a study session, of which most of you are here for. So you get to see city in action with these others as well. So with that, I would like to start our Public Housing Authority Commission meeting. Calling this to order, clerk, please take the roll.
Chairman Hartke,
Here.
Commissioner Rowe,
Here.
Commissioner Dearman,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner McClymans,
Here.
Commissioner Wong,
Here.
Commissioner Lopez is absent excused, Commissioner Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, City Clerk. Are there any unscheduled public appearances for us tonight? The Public Housing Authority, seeing none. Council, we have two items on our consent agenda. How would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Orlando.
Mr. I move that we approve the Public Housing Authority Commission meeting agenda dated October 7th, 2019, items 1 through 2.
Commissioner McClymans.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Council, we'll have a voice vote.
Commissioner Rowe,
Yes.
Commissioner Dearman. Yes. Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner McClymans,
Yes.
Commissioner Wong,
Yes.
Commissioner Orlando,
Yes.
Chairman Hartke.
Yes.
Item carries unanimously.
All right. This concludes our Public Housing Authority meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Dearman. Next on our agenda tonight is the regular City Council meeting of October 7th. And tonight, please call us to order.
Mayor Hartke,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
McClymans,
Here.
Councilmember Wong,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez is absent excused, Councilmember Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation will be led by Pastor Roy Cherian from the International Assembly of God, and our Pledge of Allegiance by Vice Mayor Rowe. Pastor.
It's a privilege and honor to stand here to do a prayer for the city of Chandler as well as the council members. Heavenly Father, we come before you today in this council meeting, humbling ourselves as the servants of you, O God. We bless our honorable Mayor, Mayor Hartke, and all the council members, our respected Chief of Police and the Fire Chief, and all the individuals who serve every citizen of this rapidly growing city. May I pray that you help us to lose ourselves in the service of others. We pray that you protect the city and guide the citizens in a good moral and allow everyone to respect each other in spite of their color, race, or language. Help our leaders to innovate new industries so that our citizens of this great city will be prospered. May I ask you to guide our leaders in all their decision making. May I pray that we will be the watchmen interceding for the welfare of our fellow citizens, all the individuals in the authority, all the men and women in the uniform. May I pray that your name will be glorified through our life and conduct. I ask all these in the name of my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ. Everyone says amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Council, we've got 7 items on our consent agenda. How would you like to proceed? Councilmember McClymans.
I move to approve consent agenda items 1 through 7.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Stewart. Any questions or comments?
Mayor,
Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, I called this in earlier to the city clerk about a small error on the 1C, the special meeting minutes. I believe that'll be corrected in the next edition. It was just a word was not correct, so I called that in earlier today. So that item will have a correction with it.
All right. Would you,
Yes,
City Clerk?
Mayor Harkey, yes, there was a typo on page 5 of item 1C. It said vocal instead of vocal junior high.
So we'll just fix it. Just for the record, Mayor, we're
Yeah,
going to
so
correct it, that's
we'll
all.
make that correction on the minutes.
Okay, do we need to amend this vote, or can we just correct the minutes?
No, we'll just
City
correct.
Attorney?
Yeah.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
Oh,
I do need to make a
Okay,
declaration that have conflict of interest on item number 7.
all right,
I will refrain from voting on that item.
all right. Councilmember Huang will be recusing his vote on item number 7. Any other questions or comments? All right, council, please vote.
motion carries unanimously with the exception of item 7, which passes 5-0 with Councilmember Wong declaring a conflict of interest.
All right, very good. Council, we will have comments on Thursday. This concludes our regular meeting of the City Council. Next, we have a study session, again, of October 7th. And on this, I know that there were a number of items called in, but before we get to that, we have some scheduled public appearances and other things to look at. So first of all, service recognition, and I would like to invite Councilmember Wong to join me in the front. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask Derek Horn, our Development Services Director, to come forward and make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'd like to ask James Comey to come forward, please. James started with the city as a utility systems operator in October 1999. With his attention to detail and sincere work ethic, James was promoted to Operator 2 and then to Operator 3. In 2004, James joined the Geographic Information Systems team as a GIS Tech 1. As a GIS Tech 1, James collected a variety of data on city-owned utility assets for water, wastewater, and reclaimed networks using high-accuracy GPS equipment. Later, in 2016, James was promoted to his current role, GIS Technician 2. James has a tremendous amount of field knowledge and effectively uses it to enhance his GIS data maintenance skills. James creates and maintains utility information in GIS and is the go-to person for any field-related utility data inquiries. He enjoys riding his motorcycle and seasonal hunting in his leisure time. Thank you, James, for your service to the city.
Next, we have a proclamation for Disability Employment and Awareness Awards. The Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities serves as a liaison between the City Council and the citizens of Chandler to increase awareness and accessibility to provide programs for individuals with disabilities who live in Chandler. The members of the Mayor's Committee recognize the importance of people with disabilities in the community and strive to increase their opportunities for success in Chandler. At this time, I'd like to ask Recreational Coordinator Logan Weimers and Recreational Superintendent Sandra Munoz Weingartner to join me to accept the proclamation. The main objective of the City of Chandler is to enhance the quality of life for the entire community by providing effective governments and efficient delivery of public services. And whereas the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities has formed to serve as a liaison between the City Council and the general community in matters regarding people with disabilities, and whereas the month of October has been observed annually as Disabilities Employment Awareness Month in Arizona, and has been recognized through joint resolution by the Congress of the United States and by presidential proclamation. And whereas the members of the Chandler Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities desire to perform a public service by officially recognizing people with disabilities as an important element in our community. And whereas the days of October 1st through the 31st, 2019, shall be designated so that members of our community will have a greater understanding of the importance of disability employment awareness and the impact it has on our society. Now therefore, I, Kevin Hartke, Mayor of the City of Chandler, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2019 as Disabilities Employment Awareness Month in Chandler, and encourage everyone to actively and appropriately to participate in the observance of this occasion. And Sandra, would you like to lead us in the presentations of the awards?
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to first present Employee of the Year, and we'd like to have Mary Carter join us, please.
The Chandler Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities has chosen Mary Carter as Employee of the Year. Mary Carter has been a valued courtesy clerk for Albertsons for the past 14 years. Oh, I'm sorry, 15 years. Mary has kept her job as her #1 priority. Mary is one of the longest tenured employees at her store. She has always taken great pride in her work and considers Albertsons as part of her family. Mary, you deserve the award of Employee of the Year.
All right. It's my pleasure to introduce one of the 2 Employers of the Year. I'd like to have Shannon Pruitt please join us. He's from Albertsons. Might have a theme going here. Albertsons store, specifically the location of Ray and McClintock, has been a vital resource in employing those with disabilities. For the past 15 years, they have had multiple individuals with disabilities on their payroll. The managers have been accommodating and willing to work through the steps needed to help each of the employees become successful. Thank you to Albertsons for being so great about opening your doors to give meaningful employment to those in the Chandler community. Albertsons, we award you the Employer of the Year for 2019, and we say thank you.
Next on our agenda is a proclamation, Arizona Cities and Towns Week. Arizona Cities and Towns Week is set aside each year to provide citizens with important information about the services and programs provided by their city and town, and to introduce the elected officials and employees that deliver them. So I would like to invite Ken Strobeck to come up and receive a proclamation. We're actually having two proclamations that will involve Ken. Ken, I'm going to read both of these. We'll take a picture and then you get to say some words based on your sage wisdom of working with irascible cities and towns for as long as you have. Whereas the citizens of the city of Chandler have come to expect a high quality of life in their community, and whereas cities and towns in Arizona work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to deliver vital services such as fire, police, and emergency medical response to ensure safe communities, and whereas cities and towns in Arizona provide essential infrastructure and services for businesses and residents such as utilities, transportation, sanitation, and recycling services, and whereas cities and towns in Arizona provide facilities and programs that enhance the lives of residents such as libraries, museums, performing arts and galleries, parks, recreation centers, and related programs. And whereas it is important for the city of Chandler to continue to provide the excellent delivery of services and programs that our citizens rely on in our community, and whereas it is one of the responsibilities of Chandler officials to ensure open and accessible government through frequent communication with citizens using various avenues and means. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Hartke, Mayor of the City of Chandler, Arizona, do hereby join with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns and fellow municipalities across the state of Arizona in proclaiming October 20th through 26th, 2019 as Arizona Cities and Towns Week. And before we take a picture, we also have just a special recognition. Proclamation. Whereas the League of Arizona Cities and Towns represents the interest of cities and towns at the Arizona State Capitol and Legislature, ensuring the preservation and local control for municipal government in Arizona. And whereas the League of Arizona Cities and Towns provides technical and legal assistance, coordinates shared services, and produces high-quality conference and educational events for municipal governments. And whereas Ken Strobeck has served as Executive Director of the Arizona League of Cities and Towns for the past 14 years. And whereas Ken Strobeck, as a trusted advocate who has represented cities and towns in Arizona and nationally, and whereas the City of Chandler joins the League of Arizona Cities and Towns Executive Committee and municipalities across the state of Arizona in expressing appreciation to Ken Strobeck for his dedicated service. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Hartke, Mayor of the City of Chandler, do hereby proclaim October 21st, 2019 as Ken Strobeck Day in Chandler, Arizona. Come back down, each council member will take you out for coffee or a meal. Would you like to say some words?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council, and city staff. This is a real honor. I appreciate it very much. And it really is, as you said through these proclamations, a mission of cities and towns to provide services, to do what we can to elevate the quality of life for our citizens all across the state. And I really think that local government, being the most accessible, the most closest to the people, and delivering the most vital services is really the unsung level of government in the state. And I really have a strong belief and a strong advocacy for the job that you all do and that your staff does in providing those services. And so it's been a labor of love for me to be working on behalf of cities and towns in Arizona. So thank you very much.
Just as a personal note, on a new mayor, but someone who met you many years ago, I've always been able to rely upon you, and I just thank you for your congeniality, your warmth, your expertise, the way you've welcomed us as council members and mayors to better serve our local community.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is recognition Operation Back to School sponsors. Nikki Tapia, please come to further a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of this council. I'm really excited to be able to be here for the recognition of our 7th annual Operation Back to School sponsors. Before I call the sponsors up, though, I'd like to call some of our partners and nonprofits on the planning committee who wanted to be here specifically for this recognition. First, Christine Hotchkiss from Friends Across America, Christine Ellis from Desert Springs Church, Jeff Williams from Salvation Army, and our Forest City Director, Victor Hardy. Now to our top sponsors for this year's Operation Back to School event. Hadassah Baldinger from East Valley Jewish Community Center. Jason and Tanya Dawson from Local Listing Pro. Carmen Deatherage from the Deatherage Foundation. Chad Goswick from Chandler Firefighter Charities. Heidi Haas from Crossroads Nazarene Church. And Saeed Huda from Islamic Center of the East Valley. And these are all of our top sponsors for Operation Back to School. This year we were able to give out 2,120 backpacks, 4,274 pairs of socks and underwear, 3,637 uniform pairs, 1,070 shoes, and 78 haircuts. Put all this together, the value of the 7th annual Operation Back to School event was $192,000 and that was brought back into the community. So thank you to all our sponsors.
Our next recognition is Pancake and Paver sponsors. Again, Nikki Tapia will further this presentation.
For our 2nd annual Pancakes and Pavers event, this was an amazing event where the community came together to help at nonprofit sites to do minor facility improvements and a community breakfast. So before I call up the top sponsors for this year's Pancakes and Pavers event, I want to call up the site leads for nonprofits where we had the work done for this event. Mike Grounds from Chandler Gilbert Arc, Jeff Williams from the Salvation Army, and Gretchen Long from Boys and Girls Club. Now on to our major sponsors. Stephen Bishop from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Tom Croak from Valley Christian High School. There were over 400 students who volunteered on this day, 4 hours each, and the value of that service was over $39,000 for that 4 hours that morning. Reuben Huntington from Old Castle Precast. Old Castle donated pavers for the work that was done at Salvation Army at a value of over $3,600. Jeff Reynolds from CertaPro Painters of the West Valley, and Chris Roth from Sherman-Williams. Sherman-Williams donated all the paint for the event. That was a value of $4,156. And finally, Dan Walton and Valerie Young Grimm from Resurrection Street Ministry. They donated all the food for the event at an amount of value of $4,378. So thank you to all of these partners for 4 hours of work done on Friday, September 6th. They brought a value back to the community of $64,405. Thank you.
We as council really are grateful to all the nonprofits and groups within our community that help with our police and fire and so many other things in our city. So thank you again from not only myself, but all of council. Council, there's been, I know, a few items that have been called in, and somewhere I have that information. But before I, as I'm looking for that, I do want to just make a couple comments without, oh, there you go, without presentation. We'll also be voting on Thursday. I don't believe anyone called this in, but we're going to be having an election coming up this March that will align our city voting with the new state mandates and legislation. So that's one of the items that we are presenting. And two other items I'm always grateful for, that when we have an opportunity, both our police and fire departments are always diligent in looking for grants and looking for ways that help augment our ability to serve our community. And I know one of those is going to be asked for a presentation, but I do appreciate the way that our staff does go after grants in so many of our departments to help add further services to our community. So thank you, police and fire, for that which is on our agenda tonight. So the first item I'd like to is Councilmember Stewart, item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to get some background on the general obligation bonds that we're requesting to go out for bid on. Can you give me a little history on that, Dawn? And so these are from 2007?
Yes, through the Mayor, Councilmember Stewart, that is correct. I've actually prepared a brief presentation regarding our bonds that might give you a little history.
I am not surprised.
I would love to share it with you.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So tonight on the agenda, we have Resolution 5315 as well as Resolution 5316 that is requesting ordering and sale and issuance not to exceed $32,500,000 of general obligation bonds and $32,500,000 and $15 million in excise tax revenue obligations. So I do have a PowerPoint that starts out with some history. All right. Here we go. All right, so our last bond election in the city of Chandler was in 2007. As you just mentioned, what that did is request from the public, from our citizens, with an estimate of projects that needed to be completed all the way through the next, I think it was an estimate for up to 15 years of projects required through our growth years. And it was about a $451,435,000 in authorization. And that authorization is between all of these categories listed on this slide. The ones highlighted, Parks and Rec, Streets, and Stormwater, are the three that we will be, are requesting additional sales out of this, through this action tonight or Thursday night. And, but just a little bit more history here. All of these bonds, this is really just approval to sell. And at the time, in 2007, that was pre-recession, and we were projecting these projects with no property tax increase based on what was happening during that time. It was great development. There was a lot of system development fee revenues coming in. And so all of this authorization existed. We then, of course, in the recession, our assessed values did reduce by a little over 30%. And it wasn't until about 2015 that our assessed values came up to that pre-recession level. And so over time, what that required is that we just spread those capital projects that were projected at that time in 2007 over a longer period of time. So we're still drawing from that, and out of the original $451 million in authorization, we still have, as you can see here, $183 million remaining. Some additional information regarding general obligation bonds. Each year when we look at what we need to sell, first of all, we update our capital improvement plan. It's reviewed and updated based on the new community needs, available funding we have at that time. We also look at other financing sources, and we apply those financing sources first. So such as fund balance that's in various funds, including general fund, grants, impact fees, highway user revenue, and state lottery dollars are also used for capital purposes. After that, the fund balance in general fund is also further applied to meet non-voter authorized capital needs. So we get a lot of requests for capital projects in the technology area. We have equipment and vehicle replacements, as well as other needs such as public safety, personnel retirement, unfunded liability uses. Once we've looked through that, then we look towards debt and other projects that fall within those voter authorized categories are then balanced to minimize secondary property tax increases. And once that's determined, then we look at how much we are going to sell as we head into the new year, which is 1920. We have a little bit more appropriation, but we cash flow what our needs are, and we only sell what is necessary based on kind of how quickly departments are spending the dollars so that we can actually have the cash available for those projects. Our general obligation bond series 2019, this slide shows the anticipated general bond sales or general obligation bond sales, and then what we are anticipating to be our not to exceed need for these purposes. $32,500,000 is the need. We also have excise tax revenue obligations on the agenda, and these are used, this is actually a bond type that does not require voter authorization. So we use these right now for our water and wastewater needs. And Public Works and Utility does perform long-range plans Annually, we update the CIP based on those needs. There's a lot of movement in this area. So there's been a lot of changes. And right now, we're really focusing on our existing infrastructure. So the 15 million, we're looking at putting towards the maintenance and improvement of the existing water and wastewater systems to make sure they're well maintained. We also perform that analysis to determine how much is needed to be sold, and that, again, is done based on cash flow. And in this area, typically the projects take longer, so although the appropriation exists, we don't actually propose sales of those dollars. It takes a little bit longer. So tonight, on Resolution 5316, we're recommending a not-to-exceed amount for excise tax revenue obligations of 15 million versus the anticipated 56,250,000 as we went into the 1920 budget year. And these are paid directly with water and wastewater user fees. And then to end on a high note, we of course have a AAA bond rating, and from all three of our rating agencies. And we are, and I know this has been quoted, but 40 communities across the nation as of August 15th have AAA bond ratings with all three. But why that's so important, of course, is because it does allow us to have to borrow for our capital projects at a very low cost. And of course, that then correlates with lower taxes and lower utility rates. And those are, of course, the main revenue streams that fund the debt service on the bonds. And with that, I can take any questions.
Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you, Don. Very thorough as expected. I appreciate that. And of all the trophies we have, we get a lot of trophies in Chandler. The AAA bond rating is probably my favorite. But I wanted to ask you a little bit more about why do we use bond authorization instead of cash? And how does that affect our bond rating if we do use that? Because I remember once asking you, in my house, we pay cash when we can. We don't borrow to do that, but why would we do borrowing? And what is that rate, and how is that related to inflation? So I've always wondered.
Okay. Through the Mayor, Councilmember Stewart, that's an excellent question. One of the things we look at, first of all, is applying as much cash or fund balance that we have available, as well as all the other funding sources when we're looking at how to fund all the needs. But we wouldn't have enough based on all the needs that we have in the city. So we're trying to manage multiple needs across multiple departments, multi-million-dollar projects, and we would draw down our fund balance very, very quickly if we applied all cash towards that. That's what's so wonderful about having a AAA bond rating. It does give us that option of selling bonds for those very, very large capital projects and getting a very low interest rate. Our last bond sale we did in 2017, our general obligation bonds were 2.28, all true in interest. And then we had, I think before that, the lowest we've ever had in our history was 1.74 TIC on our general obligation bonds, and that was back in 2016 on a refunding. So we do very, very well on, it's a very low cost of interest, and of course we can pay that over time with our secondary property tax rates without recommending an increase to those rates.
Thank you, Don.
You bet.
Councilmember Wong.
I recall in your presentation, you said last bond sale was in 2007 and recover in 2015. What does that mean, recover? That means pay off or no?
Through the Mayor, Councilmember Huang, that what I was referring to is the bond election, where we went out to the voters requesting, just like tonight, I need to request from Mayor and Council to sell bonds. Before we do that, we have to request from our citizens to allow us to sell bonds for very specific purposes. So we have to be very transparent and say we need so much for parks and recreation, we need so much for streets over time, and they allow us through a bond election to sell. And it's really just capped at a certain amount, and we draw from that amount each year on how much we're allowed to sell. And then in 2015, what I was referring to there is when we went out to the voters in 2017, our projections on all of those projects that we were requesting over time was said in the voter pamphlet that it would be no property tax increase or minimal property tax change in your property taxes, so they voted yes on it. And of course, soon after that, our recession hit, assessed values dropped, and the revenue source for those bonds is based on our secondary property tax rate, which is calculated off our assessed values. So if that goes down, we don't have the money to pay our debt service, we can't sell the bonds. So it wasn't until 2015 that our assessed values actually went back up to the level it was in 2007. It took that long for our economy to get back up to 2007 levels.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Councilmember Orlando, you had called in on these two for a couple of questions.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it just goes for both of these, by the way, Dawn. The time frame on selling and the difference between a competitive sale and a negotiated sale.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, when you say the time frame on selling, you mean how long we're planning on selling?
When do we think we'll sell these bonds?
Okay, we're planning to sell the bonds. We'd go out to them, I think it's the end of November is the bond calendar on that. And then your other question was in regards to negotiated versus competitive.
Yes.
Part of the resolution is to allow me to make that decision as we get closer to that bond sale date and go out into the market. And what that means is if you go out competitive, you actually set the date ahead of time. You set the terms on those bonds ahead of time. They're disclosed ahead of time. All of that's decided. It gets put out on a website called Parity that allows us to do electronic bidding. And we put out an invitation for bid based on these terms. And they have up until a very specific time to put in their bids, anyone who wants to buy our bonds. That's competitive. And you have, typically it's done in a market, situations are very stable, and you can lock in that date well ahead of time and not feel like you're making a bad decision. On the other hand, negotiated, if you are in kind of some turmoil in the market, negotiated gives you the option of changing that sell date and negotiating those terms, getting an underwriter on board and negotiating the terms on the bonds. So you're actually allowing me then to negotiate a bond purchase agreement through a negotiated sale. So it would have to be something pretty serious in the market to not do a competitive sale, especially as a AAA rated city. Our bonds are in demand. It's probably going to be competitive, but it's good to have that option right up until the end.
And that was, I was driving at the fact that we're AAA bond competitive, and historically has been the better way to go, but you want the option of negotiate just in case something does happen from a volatile market. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Stewart.
One final quick question. So does this mean our taxes are going up?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, it does not mean our taxes are going up. We currently are at a tax rate, a secondary tax rate of 0.87. That did not change from the prior year. In some cases, depending on where assessed values went on some people's homes, they may see a slight increase in the city portion based on their assessed values going up slightly. But it's different for different citizens, depending on their assessed value on their home. But our tax rate stayed exactly the same from last year to this year.
The rate doesn't change. Okay,
Correct.
I understand. Thank you.
All right, any further questions on number 7 or 8 by council? All right. Item number 10, Councilmember Orlando, you requested a briefing.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You kind of preluded this earlier today about the aggressiveness that our departments take in getting grants. And again, I thank the police chief and his department for going after these particular Homeland Security grants. And so I think it's important that the residents know where this money is going and how we're going to expend it and what use of it. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Councilmember Orlando, this resolution is a request to accept actually 3 different grants from the Arizona Department of Homeland Security, which is the pass-through agency for the federal Department of Homeland Security, their Urban Area Security Initiative program. The first particular grant is a request to use that funding to provide training and equipment for our rapid response team, which is our SWAT team. So in addition to the training opportunities this would provide, would also allow us to purchase new communication headsets for our individual SWAT operators so they can obviously communicate with each other. Will allow us to update our our weapons-mounted light systems on our weapons and our ballistic shields. And this will also allow us to update our SCBA, or our self-contained breathing apparatus, because as a rapid response team, SWAT team, we are able to, required to operate in a hostile environment as far as toxins and things that would require some type of breathing apparatus. So this would allow us to upgrade our current inventory of equipment. The second grant, and that first grant is total about $73,000. The second grant, which is about $10,000, will help support equipment and training for our terrorism liaison program. So in addition to the training, we will be able to update our satellite communications systems, and that includes the ongoing service that would require that system throughout the year. And then it will allow us to purchase a tablet, a handheld tablet, to be used on site at different events. And the third grant is a request to accept that funding to allow us to purchase security barriers or vehicle barriers that we would use and put in place when we had special events that would require restricting traffic. For example, our holiday parade of lights, perfect example, where we put some hard barriers in to prevent traffic from accessing the parade route. So collectively, it's about $116,000 worth of funds that would enhance our capabilities and update our equipment.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything to keep our officers well-equipped, well-prepared, and trained, it's good for us. Thank you. Keep the aggressiveness going, okay?
Thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Chief Duggan. I appreciate that. And of course, we want to have, make sure our team is fully prepared with everything that they need. Usually when we get things from the federal government, they come with tethers, or they're attached to something. Do we have to perform anything to receive these grants? And is there any ongoing maintenance that the city will be responsible from general fund to maintain any of this equipment that we're getting?
Right. So there's no ongoing maintenance as far as all these systems have lifespans. So we update whether it's communications or lights or new weapons. They're continually updated. And we've been very reliant over the history of our department, our SWAT team in particular, on our federal grants. They sustain much of our operational costs and even our capital costs. So it's been an incredible partnership with the state and federal partners, and it's proven to have saved us quite a bit of money over the years. But there's always there's life timelines to all these pieces of equipment. So when that presents itself again, we will continue to seek out grant opportunities as we've done in the past to sustain us.
Thank you. So there's no tether to the Fed. We don't have to perform anything. We just get the money.
As a member of the rapid response team, there is a requirement that we are receiving federal grant funds, and that helps us purchase some of our equipment, our vehicles, and as a result, we are responsible and obligated to respond if there was a regional event, as we would as a good partner anyway. Sure. So we would respond to Glendale if there was an incident over there or somewhere in the valley. So that is the number one requirement of being a member of the rapid response team. So we have a regional responsibility to support other communities that may need us.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, next, item number 26, Councilmember Orlando on our park coming up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andy. So we talked a little bit earlier today. As you know, this is a high visibility project. Residents are anticipating this activity. We're glad we could bring it up a little closer to the deadline. And I guess the other question I had today from the residents is the time framing of the open meetings. And can you give us a quick timeline of what we're looking at here?
Yes, certainly. So item 26 on your agenda, Mayor and Council, is a recommendation to award a professional service contract to Environmental Planning Group for the Lantana Ranch Park Phase 1 improvement. Lantana Ranch Park site is 69 acres in size. It's located on the southeast corner of McQueen and Queen Creek Roads, just south of the airport. Site was purchased in 2013 and part of a flood control project with Maricopa County. In terms of this project, It's really going to be broken up into multiple phases. This is just phase one of it. This is proposing basically the southern section of the park, which is adjacent to Appleby Road, is 8 acres. And it will have amenities that are typically found within a neighborhood park, such as playgrounds, walking paths, open turf, and other amenities like that. And it will also have a landscape design that will incorporate a landscape buffer on the south and east side of the park. The important part is that this design will be impacted and led with a public involvement process that we can work with the neighbors in the surrounding community to plan what this will look like. In terms of a timeline, we plan to do those meetings December or January of this year, beginning of next year, with our final construction documents due middle or early spring, March or April. Our goal is to bid this out as soon as we can once we reach the new year, starting this late summer, early fall. Then we will bid out the project and start work on this about a year from now.
Excellent.
Next winter.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah. And please, I appreciate the way that Parks has been good about inviting us when there's a public meeting like that. And this would be a good one because of the nature of our community there too. So thank you. Council, that's all I've got called in. Is there any other items that you would like to have a presentation or comment on? All right. Seeing none, we'll be looking at these items again on Thursday and voting on them. And that concludes our meeting tonight.